My mom and I stayed here years ago when I was just a little girl. The room looks exactly the same.
This video is for lore junkies and mythology buffs alike. I believe and hope that you will get something new from it that you haven't heard or seen before. Let's get right into it. The mural in Aerith's room is fascinating to look at and can also prove very revealing at the same time. Toriyama stated that the request for the drawing was to portray Aerith and a fauna both being involved. However, Nojima, the game's scenario writer, stated it was only Aerith. It is intended to represent the ancients' ideologies and history all in one drawing, and that Aerith drew it over the years of being at Shinra. We will start by looking on the mural just below the main flower focal point to find Medusa. Medusa was once a beautiful avowed priestess of Minerva. Minerva changed Medusa into a hideous figure with hair of snakes that had the ability to petrify anyone that she looked at. The hero Perseus was able to cut off Medusa's head by looking at her reflection in his shield. Eventually, he gives the head of Medusa to Minerva, who then placed an image of Medusa's head onto her own shield known as the Aegis. There appears to be the same symbol of Medusa in the mural, though it looks a little less threatening, which I suppose is to be expected given the probable age of Aerith. But not all bad came from Medusa. In fact, Pegasus, the white immortal winged horse, was the son of Neptune, or the Greek Poseidon, if you will, and Medusa. We've all probably heard of Poseidon's famous weapon called the trident that is able to form rivers, so too could Pegasus. When Perseus cut Medusa's head off, from the drops of her blood suddenly appeared Pegasus. Just like Poseidon and his trident, Pegasus created streams of water wherever he struck his hoof. In Ovid's Metamorphosis, Minerva travels to see one of these sites in which Pegasus had struck his hoof. When she got there, she wondered at the stream and gazed around at the green bowers of the ancient woods, taking in the view of the caves and the grottos and the spangled lawns with all their countless flowers. We can see Pegasus dripping colors rather than blood as he rises upward from beside Medusa's head. Likewise, the green forested area with flowers and such that Minerva saw is laid out behind him towards the right. Perseus and Medusa is only one of the myths involving Pegasus. In the quest of Bellerophon, the king tasked him to kill the Chimera. The Chimera is a frightful, fire-breathing beast and was on the rampage, scorching the lands of Lycia. In Final Fantasy VII, we fight a creature called a Harpy in the Gold Saucer Desert area. The Japanese version calls it a chimera, the same fabled creature that has a lion's head, a goat's head, and a snake's tail. Even more interesting is the origin of the chimera's name. Mount Chimera is the name of an actual place in ancient Lycia, famous for its constantly burning fires. This same area was known to have been the home to lions and goats and plenty of snakes. Close to the Gold Saucer area where we encounter the chimera is Cosmo Canyon. This is the home of another constantly burning fire known as the Cosmo Candle. But back to Bellerophon. He knew he could only succeed against the Chimera with the help of Pegasus. This fabled horse is wild, untamed, and soars on wings of freedom, proving nearly impossible to see, much less catch. More often than in any other place, Pegasus had been sighted near the Fountain of Pirene, drinking the delicious water and rolling himself upon the soft grass. It is told that sometimes he would crop a few of the green clover blossoms that happened to be the sweetest. And with Minerva's assistance, Bellerophon was able to bridle Pegasus and slay the Chimera. Nearby Pegasus, standing along the rainbow, the Cetra have summoned Leviathan. We see its lightstream trail passing through the Pagoda Wutai, which invoking not only our own knowledge and memories of the location, but Leviathan's too, as he provides his reasonable service as their patron deity. The scaly body and exposed tail as he maneuvers across the planet rains water downward, manifesting this same rainbow. All the while, Pegasus continues to nurse his green sweet clover. In Greek mythology, Iris is the goddess of the rainbow. It is also the name of a part of our eye that has a color unique to each person.
Yeah, your eyes. They used to be less...
As goddess of the rainbow, she provided messages between the human realm and the place of the gods. In Norse mythology, the rainbow, or rather Bifrost, is the bridge leading from Midgard, the human realm, to Asgard, the home of the gods. only the gods could cross this bridge, which was guarded by the god Heimdall. A spiritual and physical division between the Setcher in tune with the planet and those not may be represented by this rainbow. We see Fauna and Aerith, the last ancients, are drifting further away from these groups, and by the time of Final Fantasy VII story, we know Aerith is hardly able to communicate with the planet.
It won't be much longer now. The flowers, they have something important to tell us. Something they need to share with us. At least, that's the feeling I get. But before they can, there's a final step that has to be taken. Otherwise, we won't hear them.
Before transitioning away from the planet's surface, I'll quickly bring up the Greek goddess Chloris, known also as the Roman goddess Flora. The goddess Chloris' name is derived from chloros, which is Greek for the color light green or greenish yellow. As the Roman goddess Flora, she was associated with the flowers of the spring and their blossoming. She was also associated with youthfulness, and was known to have lived in the Elysian Fields, which is thought by the Greeks to be a place inside the planet providing the ultimate paradise. Figured it was worth mentioning the goddess given the importance of the life stream, greenery, flowers, and the search for the Promised Land.
Some believe the Promised Land to be a myth, others an allegory of sorts. But we take the words of the scriptures at face value and believe it to be quite real.
Moving away from the verdant surface of the planet and transitioning to the sky draws our attention to the meteor-like object and the surrounding creatures. So let's talk about the bird.
What is it with these damn birds?
Yeah, I know what you mean, Barrett. The peacock is Juno's sacred bird, and there are a couple stories detailing reasons as to why. We'll consider the story where she is, as usual, portrayed as the wife of a faithless husband and is plotting revenge on his many lovers. Jupiter feared Juno's jealousy and tried to hide himself by wrapping the earth in a dense cloud.
You owe me a pizza.
Not that cloud. Juno set the giant Argus with 100 eyes to watch over Io, the current lover of Jupiter. However, Argus was killed, so Juno took his eyes and set them in the tail of the peacock. These tail feathers having eyes can of course symbolize watchfulness, whether it is used as observing for a good or a bad purpose. In the painting, we can see green and blue eye feathers merging out into the life stream as well as the ocean. We know that once a person becomes a soldier, their eyes take on a similar color due to the Mako treatment. There is also a subtle mixing in of a purple color as the tail feathers blow out in both directions, contributing to the circular path of the life stream around the planet. Shrouded by the peacock's tail is a partially obstructed crescent moon. Among many things, Juno, or Hera in the Greek, is known as the Queen of the Gods, the goddess of marriage and women, as well as the sky and the stars of heaven. The celestial bodies in the sky are of utmost importance and make up what we know as part of the second heaven, the abode of the sun, moon, and stars. There is a very important myth pertaining to the creation of the stars, which we'll explore later. But to understand the sun and the moon in the painting, we need to quickly explore the primordial, or rather the first gods. The Greek Gaia is known as Mother Earth. She is the mother also of Uranus, known as Father Sky. Even though she came before Uranus, the sky and the earth, metaphorically and in Final Fantasy VII with the meteor, literally collided to produce offspring known as the Titans. Gaia sounds familiar because the name is seen as we climb the northern crater cliff in Final Fantasy VII. It is also thought to be another name for the planet that the party is out to protect. Of particular interest among the Titan children of Mother Earth and Father Sky are Hyperion and Theia. The importance of finding these two in Aerith's mural is because their names are mentioned in the novel Traces of Two Pasts. We find out Tifa's mother's name is Theia, and we've already known that her father's name is Brian. I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that her father's name Brian is kind of similar to Hyperion. In fact, I can't think of a man's name that sounds closer. We can just call him Hyper Brian since we know he gets worked up pretty easily about Cloud hanging around his young daughter. The Japanese novel translated into English by Peacock reads, Tifa was born into the Lockhart family in 1987. Her father's name was Brian and her mother's name Thea. The Titan Thea is the goddess of sight, lady of the ether, and Hyperion is the god of heavenly light. Their offspring are the sun, moon, and the dawn. Looking around the mural, we find a reddish-orange object with its expanding rays producing heavenly sunlight for the flowers below, and along with this sun is the moon, of course. Exploring the ocean nearby the moon, we can find a dolphin, two things directly associated with Tifa. Tifa has had dolphin-named attacks since the original Final Fantasy VII, and in Remake we can find her wearing crescent moon charm earrings when dressing up for Cloud. As mentioned, Juno is the goddess of marriage and women. In Traces of Two Paths we read, Theirs was a village steeped in the old traditions of the Republic. Men worked outside while women maintained the household. There was a tendency for the people to think that a woman's happiness depended on the man she would spend her life with. In the novel, there is a woman named Mon Ami who seemed pretty unconventional to all the women at Nibelheim. They refused to accept her ways but secretly felt the same. Cloud's mom at one point was going to leave Nibelheim too, but didn't because of falling in love with Cloud's father. His father, I wonder who that could be. These old traditions of the Republic are described in a manner that insinuate traditional Christian foundations. I say that because the God of the Bible is masculine and referred to as Father. In the New Testament, Jesus is referred to as the head of the church, and a man is the head of the household. There is a fallacy that Christianity devalues women, but actually it lifts them much higher than any other religion. Lower Junon in the original game provided us a couple hints years ago to this former republic. When arriving in Lower Junon, there is a Christian cross on the mantle in the elder folks' house. Also, we encounter the little girl named Priscilla. Her name is a clue because Priscilla and Aquila were a married couple in the New Testament of the Bible. When they are spoken of, Priscilla is always mentioned first and more often. This married couple continued to spread the gospel even after their exile from Rome by Emperor Claudius's decree. Speaking of Rome, the name Shinra Company is sometimes seen as Shin-Ra, and looking at the word's individual kanji and meaning we have Shin meaning God, and the Ra part is often used to represent Rome. We can see that Shinra is playing God by the time period of the original Final Fantasy VII and no longer expresses concern about Nibelheim nor the old traditions. Instead, they've built their metropolis of Midgar and consequently have suppressed the old traditions as well as Deciphered ideologies. In effect, their belief and practice is that of nihilism, as they destroy souls to fuel their Mako reactors and maintain their status as a world superpower. You may think that since there is a church in Sector 5 of Midgar that Shinra supports spiritual matters, but it's noted by developers in the Ultimania that a potential backstory for the church's purpose was to serve as a place for the workers to grieve for lives lost during Midgar's construction. Regardless, the church in Sector 5 has aesthetics based on a church of old traditions, such as stained glass windows, pews, and an altar. Inside the church, there is a cross-like symbol differing only by the use of a wooden diagonal. This design may have been done to reduce the tie to Christianity. In Crisis Core, the goddess statue found in Benora Underground was changed for the international release due to the Virgin Mary statue's strong ties to Catholicism. Whether this is true or not for the church as we see it, I believe the current design still allows for some interesting speculations. On the top of the church outside, there is something that looks more like an astronomical symbol than a religious one. But we'll follow up on this at the end. Midgar stands as the pillar of the new world fueled by Mako. The Republic of Junon no longer holds its former position and influence. We leave any semblance of those traditions behind as we reach Upper Junon on the back of Priscilla's friend, Mr. Dolphin. Once up top, we find ourselves in the heart of Shinra's military installation. The goddess Juno's name association with Junon is obvious. I also found that her Roman name and depiction is associated with war, while her Greek counterpart Hera is not. Juno is often depicted in Roman art holding a spear and fully armored as though she is prepared for battle at any moment. As mentioned previously, Juno is Jupiter's sister, who then also became his wife. It seems analogous to how Junon is coupled together with Midgard after Shinra's rise to power. The Sister Ray Canon's name as a symbol of Junon is now more appropriate considering Junon's new position. I want to equate Junon to the ancient seaport of Carthage and Midgard to Rome for a quick historical comparison. Hera, Juno's Greek equivalent goddess before being adopted into the Roman religion, loved the city of Carthage, and according to prophecy, her beloved city will one day be overcome by Rome, a city to be founded by Aeneas. In her mind, if one stops Aeneas, then the city of Rome will never be established. Carthage would achieve its destiny and control the Mediterranean. Long story short, Rome was founded, and then during Caesar Augustus's rule, Rome took control of Carthage, and it became a great Roman city, second only to Rome in the Roman Empire. Juno's favorite city, Carthage, being subdued like this may have been how she felt married to Jupiter, who held the title of the supreme god. Juno is often depicted as jealousy-stricken, frustrated, and manipulative, which no doubt is often true, but usually warranted. Jupiter's infidelity can be seen as a reason for much of Juno's anger and actions. Virgil, the Roman poet and author of the Aeneid, questioned the brooding anger of Juno. He asked, where lay the cause? How was her godhead injured? What grievance made the Queen of Heaven so fret a man renowned for piety? Such a cycle of calamity. Can a divine being be so persevering in anger?
Now, show me something truly exquisite.
We'll come back to Juno and see if she is still mad in a little bit. But first, all hail Caesar.
Mr. Vice President.
If Midgard is a type of Rome,
Mr. President.
then Rufus is certainly a type of Caesar.
That's right.
We see a statue of him set up at Junon along with a celebration parade taking place no sooner than his father's death. He already has his own coin minted for his rule. The coin scene reminds me of when Jesus was baited by the Pharisees into answering if they should pay tribute to Caesar. Jesus' response was, "Render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's." Basically, he was saying that Caesar is not God, even though the Romans thought so and acted like it.
You're a soldier, aren't you? Which, of course, would mean that I own you.
Apparently no different than how we see Shinra. Speaking of coins, the term for money is derived from the Latin word moneta, which is another epithet of the goddess Juno, the goddess whose temple on the Capitoline Hill in Rome was the location of Rome's first mint. The coin that Rufus is flaunting during his fight with Cloud has one side that states, Shinra Inc., a new era, ever forward reigns supreme, and the other side has a picture of Darkstar and flowers.
I'm seeing things. Fumes from all the Mako, maybe.
The flowers on the coin are mandragoras, which are poisonous, can induce hallucinations, and can cause fear or even death. Their connection to Greek mythology is found through the mandragora flower called deadly nightshade, or in the Latin, Atropa belladonna. For the ancient Greeks, Atropos was one of the three fates, while her sister fates spun and gave out the thread of human life. It was Atropos whose role it was to dispense death by cutting the thread. We see these flowers in multiple places throughout Remake, including Aerith's mural. The picture of Mayor Domino tagging President Shinra with a mandragora is a visual clue to the fact that Mayor Domino, Avalanche, and Rufus are plotting to kill him.
Yes. Understood. The VP needs us.
Rufus declares, "I'll control the world with fear. It takes too much to do it like my old man. A little fear will control the minds of the common people. There's no reason to waste money on them." His mindset can be seen minted on the coin that couples fear-inducing mandragora flowers with a terrifying dark star. A curious detail found in the Final Fantasy VII Remake art book is that Darkstar's name is shown as Umbra, a term to describe a shadow cast onto the earth by an object. It's an oddly fitting name and description for his dog, considering the fear that both it and the literal dark star of a meteor will cause. Considering the previous details, we can see why the Whispers in Remake deem him important to repeating destiny.
What is all this?
Rufus, for all intents and purposes, played a huge part in enabling Jenova's reunion and Meteor summoning to occur in the original Final Fantasy VII. In Advent Children, though he may have meant well, he repeated a similar mistake by recovering part of Jenova's head from the northern crater.
Mother!
A good son would have known.
I've referenced Minerva a few times while looking at other myths. I need to quickly explain her origin, as she is usually the first and often only Roman deity that comes to mind when examining the Final Fantasy VII compilation. Her birth will also demonstrate another reason that Juno, as usual, is upset with Jupiter. Jupiter had an affair with a woman named Metis, a Titan. When Metis became pregnant, Jupiter, who had seized control of the universe by overthrowing his father, Saturn, learned of a similar prophecy foretelling his downfall at the hands of his own son. Fearing that Metis' unborn child would fulfill this prophecy, Jupiter swallowed Metis and her child whole, just as Saturn had swallowed Jupiter's brothers and sisters. Biding her time, the unborn Minerva plotted her emergence from the womb. At long last, she burst forth from Jupiter's forehead, fully grown and ready for battle. Despite this rather strange start to her relationship with her father, Minerva eventually became Jupiter's favorite child. Juno is the embodiment of the traditional female roles of a wife and a mother, so it's no surprise that this birth in particular angered her. Being jealous of Jupiter, Juno asked the goddess Flora how to conceive a child on her own. Flora gave her a sacred lily, and simply by touching it, Juno conceived the god of war Mars without any assistance from her husband Jupiter. Thus, she became the Blessed Virgin Juno. The three-lobed lily that used to represent her parthenogenetic power was inherited by the Virgin Mary, who still retains it. The family dynamics between Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva are kind of bizarre, to say the least. These three Roman deities comprise what is known as the Capitoline Triad. They occupied an important place in the public religion of Rome, with temples dedicated to them in various places. Each of these deities, in some way, is associated with virginity. It makes me wonder about the Virgin Mary Goddess statue in Crisis Core that is found also in other places throughout Gaia, or more accurately, the planet. As the statue represents salvation, I wonder which of the Capitoline Triad, if any, or if all, are antagonistic towards the planet. Minerva and Juno are easily found in Final Fantasy VII, but Jupiter remains an enigma, as much as Cloud's father does. I'll let you form your own opinion on this as we move forward. When I emphasized the importance of the sky earlier, I went straight into the novel Traces of Two Paths, outlining Tifa's association to the moon in the mural. I'd like to come full circle back to the Peacock once more. There has always been something strange about the prominence of this bird. Could it be, as many people speculate, just a reference to the phoenix and rebirth? Could it be the plumed serpent Quetzalcoatl, snaking its way to a first appearance in FF7 instead of FF8? Is the Peacock truly as out of context in the world of Final Fantasy VII as the winged horse Pegasus, Medusa, and other mythological entities? Out of all the adulterous acts and illegitimate children of Jupiter, the child to suffer most acutely from Juno's jealousy was the hero Heracles. The name Heracles literally means the glory of Hera. And even though the child's name gives honor and tribute to the goddess, this in no way pacified Jupiter's spouse. Her anger is observed well before he is born, as she tried to preempt his birth. The animosity of Juno towards Heracles continues throughout his life. Yes, he is most famous for his 12 Herculean labors, but of interest to our discussion is that Juno caused him to go temporarily insane on more than one occasion, resulting in death to those around him both times. As an atonement for one of these deaths, he was forced to be a slave and wear women's clothing. Who do we know that is often acting insane and that has worn women's clothing? The point is that I had to mention Heracles before I can continue addressing the Peacock. The two are not mutually separate. They have everything to do with the second heaven and the celestial bodies found there. Though not the sun or the moon this time, but rather the stars, specifically the Milky Way. I'd like to call to your attention the following painting, The Origin of the Milky Way by Tintoretto. The painting depicts the god Jupiter bringing his son Heracles, born of a mortal woman, to nurse from the breast of his wife, the goddess Juno. According to myth, the infant Heracles would obtain immortality through breastfeeding from the goddess. However, as she awakens, Juno draws away in anger, causing her milk to spray across the sky, thus forming the Milky Way, indicated by an array of stars. From her other breast, milk falls toward Earth, resulting in the creation of beautiful lilies. The peacock, identified with Juno, is connected to an eagle, the animal of Jupiter, by a web symbolizing deceit. Below the immortal couple, numerous cupids with bows drawn symbolize the marital discord and its universal consequences. I've also added in a missing lower part of the painting, though it is much less detailed. It shows a reclining figure on Earth, and nearby milk from Juno's other breast is splashing straight down. Where it lands, a new flower springs up, again explaining the first milk-white lily. The painting by Tintoretto showing the creation of the Milky Way and the first lily lend itself to most of what we see happening in this particular area of the mural. The parallels between the two are astonishing, even down to details like the 10 stars scattered on and above Juno's wing. Though both of these images explain beautiful beginnings, the mural will go on to describe a different end. But before that happens, the first thing I think of for Starry Skies in Final Fantasy VII is a most precious moment in a most unusual place. The promise has been made. Cloud locks his heart with tender secrets, the desire to impress Tifa, the need to prove he is special, the admiration and longing for the great hero soldier Sephiroth. We also hear some of Tifa's tender thoughts and traces of two pasts as she reflects back. Her mother compared Cloud to a soldier from Shinra Company, who the youth in those days touted as the great hero Sephiroth as a way of complimenting Cloud. Tifa remembered thinking in her head at the time, "Oh, is he?" Yes, the reason why her heart was racing now was because Cloud was unreachable, a thing of beauty, like the stars. Was it due to some sort of spell cast on her the night of the stars falling down? Or was it perhaps the sight of Cloud seeming slightly enthusiastic that she found so endearing? That promise she suggested they make was just a simple idea. Hey, promise me something. When you become famous, and if I'm ever trapped or in trouble, promise you'll come and save me. Just a simple idea, yet the moment they exchanged words, it became an irreplaceable promise. That night also that made her see Cloud, whom she adored, as an ordinary boy. Tifa fell in love with Cloud. It was the kind of love where she wanted to be with him. That was how she felt. So you may still be asking, where did you see 10 stars earlier? Let's quickly first talk about this glowing translucent flower positioned on an outstretched wing, exactly where the 10 stars representing the Milky Way sit on Juno's outstretched arm in the Tintoretto painting. Based on what we see in the ancient mural and what I can glean from research, there is one real flower that consistently has 7 petals and looks like this one. This is called the star flower. Yes, the star flower. The pure white blossoms of the star flower are classified under the genus Lysimachia. The genus draws its name from 2 Greek words, lysis meaning a loosening or releasing, and mache meaning strife. This phrase, releasing strife, can't be important. So let's connect the dots, or rather let's find the 10 stars. There are 8 white stars dotted around the starflower and peacock wing. The 9th star shines through the center of the translucent flower, and the 10th is the nearby star with the red tail.
Lab rat dog.
Hold on, a star with a red tail? Don't you mean a meteor?
Man, you need to lighten up. Hell, you might even try smiling.
No, call it a star with a tail for now, because I'm trying to stay positive and ignore Fenrir peeking his head out.
On second thought, maybe frowning suits you better.
Then we can say that the Milky Way and starry sky provided a shooting star for Cloud and Tifa to wish upon while at the Nibelheim well making their promise. I do wonder why there are 2 different versions of the starry sky during their promise. We see in the original Final Fantasy VII the star crosses a sky. However, in Remake, as Cloud is remembering, there's a lack of activity in the sky. The promise scene isn't the only place we've observed a shooting star. Bugenhagen shows us one that is a little more eventful as we are in his observatory. If Aerith could have controlled the inspiration behind the mural's creation, then I'm sure that she would not have painted some of the objects that create nightmares from childhood dreams. In fact, she may have avoided everything about the sky completely. However, even in her own innocency as a child, she is overcome by visions from the planet, resulting in the amazing mural we see before us. All of the beauty and color expressed loom upward into a much more foreboding and terrifying sky.
I miss it. The steel sky.
This ancient history is enough of a reason to keep the last of the Cetra from ever wanting to look up past the underside of a steel plate. Tintoretto's Origin of the Milky Way painting stops short of meteors. The red-tailed star is no doubt a meteor bringing destruction. The mural shows the beginning of the red tail originating among the group of other 9 white stars. We do know that Sephiroth is associated with the color red. A good question to ask at this point is, what is the cause of the meteor? We've explored Juno's anger at Jupiter and her wrath towards the hero Heracles, who inadvertently caused Juno to create the Milky Way. But would she go so far as to use one of her own stars to destroy the planet? Let us again consider her position in the Capitoline Triad. Let us consider that she has the city Junai named after her. We also can see Juno's association with lilies, and Minerva being the will of the Lifestream personified, protecting the lily. Well then, perhaps the meteor's sudden appearance is hidden within the Starflower's meaning of releasing strife. As with most themes in Final Fantasy VII, there is usually more than one meaning. It could be a releasing of strife upon the planet, or releasing the planet from strife. Cloud Strife is a complex character capable of both. He is not just the story's protagonist, but also a catalyst for destruction. From the same area as the Peacock, we can see an ominous black figure with red eyes emerging that is accompanying the meteor. Its face is set on confronting the Lifestream summoned creatures that are defending the planet. Per Nojima's statement, the drawing depicts the ancients' history and ideologies. And from what we know of them, the ancient historical interpretation of the drawing shows us the calamity from the sky, Genova, that crashed into the planet 2,000 years ago on a meteor. Historically, it also represents Final Fantasy VII's Genova War that resulted in another meteor. And if history is any indicator of the future, then it also foretells events that will occur into FF7 Rebirth and beyond. The red-eyed black creature with its jaws stretched open is none other than Fenrir from Norse mythology. Fenrir is the offspring of Loki, neither of whom are inherently evil, but rather are serious fathers to the gods and humanity by introducing the unexpected and almost always unwelcome or even tragic to the ordered worlds.
The future is always a blank
The Norns
page.
decreed the end of all things at Ragnarok, and like the 3 fates of ancient Greece, their decisions could not be challenged or reversed. They describe the beginning of Ragnarok and Fenrir's part in it. Because of this prophecy, Odin is determined to have the wolf bound before he grows too large and strong to control. even though at this point in the Norse story, Fenrir has caused no trouble and is living peacefully with the gods. The gods attempted to bind the wolf twice before with large metal chains, but both attempts ended with the chains broken beyond repair. Odin commissioned the dwarves, who are known for forging weapons, such as his own spear, Gungnir, and Thor's hammer, to make a fetter that Fenrir will not be able to break. The dwarves send back the chain Gleipnir, made of 6 impossible elements: a cat's footsteps, a woman's beard, a mountain's roots, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, and the spittle of a bird. Ragnarok, as noted, was decreed by the Norns, but brought about, in part at least, by the actions of the gods themselves in dealing with Loki's children. I like to point out that Fenrir broke his chains twice, and Cloud defeated Sephiroth twice, the first time at Nibelheim, and then again at the Northern Crater. The same way that the chain Gleipnir is made up of 6 impossible elements to bind Fenrir to prevent his third attempt from succeeding, so too is Cloud's impossible fusion sword, composed of 6 individual swords that are supposed to prevent Sephiroth from succeeding on his third attempt. The irony of both Fenrir and Sephiroth is that neither Gleipnir nor the fusion sword prevented them. Ragnarok still proceeds in Norse mythology, and Final Fantasy VII Remake is still taking place, hypothetically, post-Advent Children.
Stay where you belong, in my memories.
Fenrir's depiction, which we don't see associated with Cloud until Advent Children, always precedes the Norse Ragnarok. Cloud is filled with regret, sorrow, and sadness in Advent Children due to the lost lives of friends that he holds himself personally accountable for.
But I let you die.
In his sorrow, he loses hope and is unable to bring help to a world facing fear and dread.
Face it, Cloud. All you are is an empty puppet.
Appropriately, Fenrir is depicted in the mural shedding tears from his red eyes that meet the red tail of the meteor as flowers. The resulting 10 purple flowers are blossoming as the meteor approaches the planet. So, is it any coincidence that we transition from 10 pure white stars of the Milky Way scattered amongst a star flower that releases strife to 10 purple flowers? Coincidence has no place when taking into context with fate and destiny. I like to refer back to the purple mandragora flowers on Rufus's coin once more. These flowers are poisonous, induce fear, and are deadly. One of the types of mandragora flowers discussed was the Belladonna atropa. Again, atropos is the third Norn, or Moria, or fate that cuts the thread of life. These same Norns that foretell Ragnarok and shape fate are the Whispers in Remake, and even go by a similar name of Moria by Red 13 in Remake's German translation. The imagery of these threads of fate were revealed to us as far back as 2009 with the release of On the Way to a Smile. The artwork on the inside page of the book is the same as when the party cuts their own threads of fate off of the Whisper Harbinger. The only difference is the added purple coloration indicating Jenova's will and presence that had led up to the past events currently being envisioned by the party.
This can't be our future.
The future isn't set in stone.
I'm back!
Just as Cloud is the linchpin for the plans of Sephiroth and Jenova, he is also the linchpin for the fate of the Yellow Lily. I found that by taking the center of Aerith's mural with the lily and comparing it against the artwork from Crisis Core, it shows that the two pictures express a similar idea. We see the Buster Sword's hilt inside a circle of protection. Specifically, it is the protection for the hopes and dreams passed down from Angeal to Zack and then the Cloud that the sword's legacy represents. Protection from what, you may say? The surrounding Jenova DNA pattern is not only an indication of the physical change that these soldiers undergo, but also the susceptibility of their minds and memory to Jenova's control. Of particular concern is our linchpin Cloud. I wanted to quickly mention the Buster Sword circle of protection under attack since Zack is going to have a bigger part in the story after Remake. And as it is probably obvious in the mural, the yellow lily is also surrounded by a circle of the life stream's protection for the planet from the threats in the sky. Threats that can easily find their blame being placed on Cloud. Aerith knows the true hearts of people, and in the book On the Way to a Smile, she states that she wants to ask for Cloud's help in dealing with the negative life stream, but depending on how she approaches Cloud, it might lead to him getting hurt. The Cloud she knew had a very fragile heart. In Remake, we see Aerith pinning the yellow lily on Cloud's heart, then grabbing his arm and asking for his help. With their fateful coming together, the darkness of the negative life stream visibly manifests itself as the whispers to both of them on the surface of the planet. Obviously, a great deal of Final Fantasy VII revolves around flowers. The yellow lily at the center of the mural is hard to ignore, and whether it has anything to do with one goddess or another is debatable. But we can see that the flower is certainly special. When Toriyama was asked what follow them the yellow flowers mean, he said, "The yellow flower is a symbol of the many events and feelings that Aerith has seen and lost since she first appeared in Sector 8. It could be the flower that is trampled by the people of Midgar, or it could be the flower that she passes on to Cloud when she meets him, or it could be the future of the planet where the flower blooms. In any case, Aerith is perplexed by the fact that, like the flower that is falling, something in her is being attacked and lost to the feelers." As Aerith is explaining what she knows while in her old room with the mural, as soon as she goes to say,
Follow them, the yellow flowers.
"Follow them, the yellow flowers," her head turns directly to Cloud's direction as she speaks those specific lines. It's as if to correlate or even symbolize Cloud as the flower. We then see the transition into her vision of the flower falling and whispers appearing. In Final Fantasy VII, the yellow lily has its identity with the planet and Aerith, but just as importantly, it is associated with the yellow chocobo-headed Cloud Stripe, not just with him alone, but vicariously with his friends also. We can see the lily that Aerith starts with making his way from Cloud to Tifa to Marlene and finding his home in Seventh Heaven. So fear not, as many would have you to do, there is hope. Aerith has said the flowers are stronger than they look. They've been stepped on and landed on more times than we can count throughout the compilation. Perhaps what we should ask ourselves is if Cloud is stronger than he looks. He sure looks sick and weak like a dying flower in the first Remake trailers. Joking aside, this is Cloud's journey, and he is special to Aerith, and she wants to protect him. Not only him, she wants to protect the planet. This tremendous burden of protecting the planet has fallen on the two of them. They could be deemed the planet defenders.
I just want to do everything in my power to help. All of you. And the planet.
This should be where I wrap it up, but I wanted to quickly mention a few little details, some that I may have skipped and some that are more speculation than anything else. I'd like to take you inside both Aerith's house and Cloud's house in the original Final Fantasy VII and see if you notice anything similar between the two of them. Yes, they both have the only globes representing the planet in the entire game. Coincidental? I wonder. And shall we go a little deeper into the rabbit hole? I thought I'd come back to the weird symbol on the outside of the church. As a basis for conversation, let's consider the astronomical symbol for a star. It is a six-sided figure as recognized by the scientific community. The cross inside the church is very akin to this, different only by having its base extend downward to make up the cross appearance. Let me also mention that Juno has her own asteroid discovered in 1804 that is currently floating around in our own solar system. It has been given this symbol by science, which is composed of a star and a scepter, very much like the cross inside the church. While we're at the church, take a look at the stained glass windows above the two doors on both sides of the cross. Their design is the same shape and number of petals as the star flower on Juno's Peacock wing that releases an asteroid-like object. On the outside of the church, there is a symbol on the roof that looks like it started off with the same style of a cross as the one from inside, but then morphed into this thing that is still cross-like but with two circles extending off the top. 2 circles with a line denote opposition in the astronomical community. Opposition is described as a solar system body, such as a meteor or asteroid, but mostly the moon when it is on the opposite side of the Earth from the sun. Basically, the symbol is used in drawings to show an object in line with the Earth. So again, not sure why Shinra would build a church with these type of symbols that aren't used for worship. Maybe Hojo put them up there in honor of his new god Genova, or Junova, instead of the proper Jehovah.